Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. It's the afternoon of Friday, the 20th of February here in a very cold nation's capital. And I must say, yesterday I was down on Capitol Hill, and there's a kind of a corridor between the House office buildings on the one side, the Library of Congress on the other. Then you go further north, it's between the Capitol, the Library of Congress, the Capitol, and the Supreme Court, and then it goes between two Senate office buildings. And boy, there was a north wind coming down that corridor. And I don't want to hear anything about global warming as long as I live, because I don't see any global warming. I challenge the global warming people to come up with any empirical event that would disprove their thesis, because somehow they seem to think that they're immune from empirical events, not empiricist events, but empirical events. So we're all in this terrible deep freeze, right? But it's refreshing, right? It's bracing. So let's see if we can get something done here. In the Ukraine, first of all, we have got the Minsk II Accords, and these have emerged now at the end of last week, and the ceasefire is largely holding over the vast majority of the fighting front. The shooting has calmed down. There are some sectors where not one violation is reported by the OSCE people. However, there is the demagogy of the fascists in Kiev. And this is the main problem. We've got this guy Yarosh, the head of Right Sector. He's a top fascist leader, and he has announced that he will not be bound. And, of course, this means that the units of the Ukraine National Guard, which are loyal to Right Sector, right, be they loyal to Yarosh, I'm sure Tyanibok will not be far behind, and the rest of these neo-Nazis, essentially, they are all saying that their units will fight on. So where does that leave us? Naturally, we had last week Jen Psaki coming up with this amazing formulation that the United States will punish violations of the Minsk II Accords, but only if they come from the pro-Russian side, not if they come from the Ukrainian fascist side. And I've just... The astounding news of today is that this red-headed version of Dr. Goebbels, Jen Psaki, is now going to go to the White House as communications director. Well, at least communications director tends to be a largely behind-the-scenes role. This is not White House spokesman, not State Department spokesman. So maybe she's being promoted upstairs to get her out of the public eye, because she has done untold damage to the United States. We're now told that the Georgian, that means the country Georgia, right, Gruzinia, the Georgian tin pot fascist Saakashvili, Mikhail Saakashvili, the architect of the 2008 August war, when with his toy army he attacked the overwhelmingly superior Russian forces and hoped to drag the United States into a war. He was ready to fight to the last American, as these people always were and are. Saakashvili is now the key advisor to Poroshenko in Kiev. And today we've got the anniversary, right? This is the 20th of February. It's now the anniversary of that horrible, that version of the inferno, right? That horrible night with the vast bonfires raging in downtown Kiev, this hell on earth, right, visited, and then hell and night have brought a monstrous birth to light. Remember that the three Western foreign ministers, including France and Germany, Steinmeier was there, they signed a deal, a modus vivendi, some kind of a way for the forces to coexist, and that was then overturned within less than 24 hours with a fascist coup led by these people, right? Turchinov and also the Yatsenyuk, who's still in power. So they're all there. And now this is the anniversary. So we're having essentially a gigantic Horst Wessel anniversary. Look up Horst Wessel, Wessel. That was the famous song of the brown shirts back in Germany in the 1930s. And Horst Wessel was somebody who got himself killed street fighting, just like the Heavenly Hundred, we're told. We obviously regret human losses, but the political clarity is that these people were essentially fighting for this coup, which we have just characterized. And we noticed, despite the attempts to hide it by the Western networks, there is a very feeble rally round Poroshenko reaction at this point. The rally round is very muted, and there were boos and whistles and calls of shame when Poroshenko appeared at this Horst Wessel rally exactly 1 year after that night of hell on earth with the bonfires, leading then into the coup, and the actual anniversary of the coup is tomorrow. You'd have to ask yourself, if you were the French or German foreign minister, why would anybody ever negotiate with you after your lying duplicity in that 20th to 21st time frame of last year? So, Yarosh, the right sector, are very much calling the tune. And remember now that we can expect tremendous instability inside Ukraine, because the veterans now of that pocket, the people who were caught in the pocket around Debaltseva, they're coming out angry. And they say, and they're right, the order to get out of there should have been given months ago, weeks ago or months ago. Get out of the pocket. It's very much like Hitler vis-a-vis the Stalingrad encirclement. Remember, von Paulus, the commander on the scene of the German army there in Stalingrad, said, look, we have to retreat. And Hitler said no, promoted him to field marshal, trying to tell him that no field marshal had ever surrendered. Hitler wanted everybody killed. And that seems to be Poroshenko's position, right? Last week at Minsk II, Poroshenko was told by Putin, and everybody knew it, your forces are encircled, and we should include in the negotiation of Minsk II a procedure for disarming them and letting them exit the pocket. There's no reason for them to die. They should go home. But they leave the weapons behind because, after all, they're trapped. And Putin pointed out that if you didn't have that provision built into the agreement, the soldiers inside the pocket would still fight to get out, and their confreres outside the pocket would try to fight their way in. Well, that failed, and the resistance has largely collapsed, although quite a few people are still in that pocket. So the people coming out say, Poroshenko, you're a demagogue. You valued your short-term, extremely short-term popularity over the idea of saving these people. And what has been destroyed here is that's the real main force unit of the Ukrainian army. The one combat-capable part of the Ukrainian army has now been wiped out. So this is, as somebody was saying, this is Dunkirk in addition to Stalingrad. In other words, it's Stalingrad, but where some people are allowed to get out, right, thanks to the humanitarian policies of the rebels in this case, right? A lot of them are allowed to leave unarmed. Some of them got out with arms, but a lot of them have been allowed to leave unarmed, disarmed. And those people are now mad as hell at Poroshenko for leaving them there with no supplies, no orders. The officers ran away. Ukraine is a military disaster. It's a failed state. And the United States, it would be insane to lash yourself to that rotting carcass Ukrainian failed state. Back to the minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, 20th of February 2015. People in the New York City area who want to do something for Reverend Pinkney, you can protest Whirlpool and their racist company town of Benton Harbor, majority black, but racist ruled. And that's all thanks to Congressman Fred Upton, Republican congressman, the family that owns Whirlpool, and the, what can we call her? The tubby temptress Kate Upton, right, who gets herself plastered all over the front page of all kinds of dubious publications. So here we go. On Saturday, February 21st, go to the Best Buy store, 60 West 23rd Street, near 6th Avenue. And there are going to be protesters out there. You'll find them telling you, don't buy Whirlpool, Maytag, Amana, KitchenAid. That's all Whirlpool. And get Pinkney out of jail, right? Boycott those appliances unless and until Reverend Pinkney is freed and cleared of all charges. So this is from 1 o'clock in the afternoon to 3 o'clock. Once again, Best Buy, 60 West 23rd Street near 6th Avenue, New York City. And have some fun, right? Get out there and stick it to those fascists in the southwest corner of Michigan. Now, getting back to it, the veterans now of the Debaltseva pocket want a coup. They want Poroshenko out. Some of them have reasonable views. Others, unfortunately, as disgruntled, betrayed war veterans, right, stabbed in the back as they were, I guess, they're going to go to the fascist side. So that's what it is. On the Russian side, let us remember and also honor the fact that the Russian Day of the Armed Services, right? I guess Dien Вооруженных Сил is going to be held next Tuesday, February 23rd. This is a good time, as January 27th was. Say thank you to the Soviet forces for what they did to free the world of Nazism, because in terms of the losses, they absolutely bore the brunt of this. So we have a gala reception in the Kremlin, which has been held on the 20th. Looking forward to the holiday on the 23rd. Putin congratulated veterans and servicemen, and he points to the upcoming celebration May 9th, the 70th anniversary of the victory over Nazism, a sacred day for Russia. It was the Russian Soviet people and the Soviet army that made the decisive contribution to fighting Nazism. And that is, as a historian, that is simply the fact. And he mentions Stalingrad, Kursk, Warsaw, Leningrad, Budapest, Berlin, the defense of Moscow, and others. And of course, Stalingrad in the middle of it all. And then we're brought then up to date. No one, says Putin, no one should harbor any illusions about the possibility of achieving military supremacy over Russia or to use pressure against Russia in any way or form. Russia will always have an adequate response to any such reckless actions. So a tough, dignified speech by Putin. Anybody who picks a fight with this is simply insane. And why? For what possible reason? It's a glacis, it's an avenue of approach to Russia. We know the points, right? The Crimea is a warm water port, big theme in Russian history. The fear of invasion, Sweden, Napoleon, Hitler, therefore all coming through these areas. They want those governments friendly, therefore Finlandization, therefore Austrianization. And as he says, that Nazism is a direct threat to Russia. So anybody pushing neo-Nazi ideology is going to be going to be regarded with grave suspicion and hostility by Russia. And of course, we're told about this Maidan. Well, I've got some pictures here. You go to my website, you can see them. The headquarters of Maidan had a picture of whom? Of Stepan Bandera, the Nazi leader of the Ukraine. Come on. This is absolutely crazy. Now, there are some websites that now claim they're telling you something new by saying, oh, the Western puppets are starting to lose the battle of Ukraine. Well, you can find that. You can go back 2 or 3 weeks on my website and find out all about the Debaltseva pocket, right? It's not new today. February 7th, so 2 weeks ago, we had it already, the Debaltseva and Vuhlersk pocket. So factor that all in. Now, Ukraine is a failed state. They have just had this humiliating defeat. Their army is gone. That's it. They've got some rabble in arms now, but the main units have been trapped in the pocket. Poroshenko could have pulled them out. He didn't do it. The currency has collapsed, right? The hryvnia. And we're going to get a 300% increase in the price of natural gas as part of the IMF conditionalities packet. Now, this place is going to blow up. It's going to be chaos. Don't send military forces in there. Get out of there. And it's also time to put the bridle on some of these people. Tusk, we call him the elephant in the room, right? Donald Tusk, the head of the president of the European Commission, says it's time to exert pressure on the rebels to make them respect Minsk too. And again, we'd have to say, what about your fascist buddies there, Tusk? And this is getting to be widely known. ARD means the first program of the German television, right? Arbeitsgemeinschaft der Rundfunkanstalten Deutschlands, ARD, German first program. So they have a talk show. They have the Ukrainian ambassador on there, and a talk show participant says, do you know who's fighting for you? Those are those National Guard brigades with the runes of the SS, right? Those sort of lightning bolt SS things, and swastikas, Hakenkreuzer, openly displayed. And he says, oh, of course, we know, but they fight for us. They're under our control. Now, where may we go next? Again, this situation is going to take a while before it comes to a halt. The city of Mariupol, this is a key place for dominating the where the Don, right, the Russian River Don, goes into the Sea of Azov, and then of course through that Strait of Kerch into the Black Sea. And it's very likely that the Russian side and Mariupol will explain why in just a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Just looking at that city of Mariupol, what is the great Russian concern about this? It's important because if you put a NATO base or anybody's hostile base in Mariupol, you're essentially dominating the point where the Don River flows into the Sea of Azov, and then after that you can get into the Black Sea, and then you can go through the Straits, the Bosporus and the Dardanelles, and then you're in the Aegean and you're in the Mediterranean. So Mariupol is very important. Got to also remember, this is an international question. If you're one of the countries that has a coast on the Caspian Sea, take a look at this. You have to remember that the Volga goes into the Caspian Sea, but if you're Iran, let's say, or other countries, right? Azerbaijan is there, and others. The whole series of countries that have coasts on the Caspian Sea. Their access to the world is by going up the Volga, and then across the Volga-Don Canal, and then out through Rostov-on-Don, and then Mariupol, and then once again, Sea of Azov, Black Sea, Aegean, Mediterranean, and then you're in the world ocean, the Atlantic, or the other way, Arabian Sea. So look at this now, huh? This is a very important point, and it's likely that the Russians are going to want it. So brace yourself for the idea that you cannot have a bunch of Ukrainian fascists with missile launchers interfering with ships. And again, it's something where quite a number of Caspian Sea facing countries would be involved. So on the German First program, you can see the Ukrainian ambassador confronted with the Nazi regalia of his own forces. And what do we get? Here this morning we had, on the Diane Rehm show, we had Ignatius, David Ignatius of the Washington Post, and he says, well, the Russian cynicism is total. I'm sorry, David. You have to remember, Minsk I was broken up by these fascists and their insistence on constantly shelling the pro-Russian positions across the Minsk I ceasefire line. And the Minsk II, the problems that you're seeing were built in when the demagogue Poroshenko said, I refuse to accept that my troops are surrounded, right? Going down the same path as Hitler. Same kind of hysteria. So there we have all that. Now, we're going to have a report, we hope, from Athens, but we just got the word that some kind of a face-saving, papering over deal has been worked out at the Euro group of finance ministers. So the confrontation between Varoufakis, whom we're supporting, and Schäuble, the austerity ghoul working for the mentally deficient Merkel, that Varoufakis has at least been able to bring this back. Now, the Greeks wanted, as we heard last week, a 6-month bridge loan getting to September. What we have right now is a 4-month bridge loan with, I think the other provisions are relatively vague, but in any case, I don't have them. So we had Merkel in the past 24 hours saying austerity has been good for Greece and it has been working. This is insane. The unemployment in Greece went from 7% to 26% under this program. The gross domestic product has declined by 25%. Look, you can see, if you don't have 1/4 of your workforce working, you're going to lose 1/4 of your GDP. And that's exactly what happened. And the debt burden has gone up by 1/3 for nothing. You're paying all that money, paying 60 or 70 billion euros to have a quarter of your economy shut down. So it's just insane. Austerity is a failure. It's theoretically a failure, practically a failure, morally, from any conceivable human point of view. This has to end. And this notion of punishment and so forth, this is all quite insane. The one thing that Syriza probably needs to do right now is to put a halt to flight capital. Remember, we have been campaigning on this program for capital controls and exchange controls, right? We greeted Minsk, right? We greeted the government of Belarus, Lukashenko, back in December when they imposed capital controls and exchange controls, and when Putin did the same thing on an informal and slightly veiled basis. But that's really what should happen. We're told that about 1 billion euros have fled from Greece just in the last couple of days. So we'll be looking into that press conference. This, by the way, was held by Moscovici, the French banker's boy who serves now. He replaced Olli Rehn as the financial guy on the European Commish, as we call it. Now, the one development, which is better to know now and rather than later, is that Podemos, in particular, as long as Podemos is led by this dishonest and evasive Pablo Iglesias, they are no reliable ally to Syriza at all. We just had this event at the Proshansky Auditorium of the City University of New York in Midtown Manhattan. So in comes Iglesias, introduced, of course, by the Ford Foundation's darling Amy Goodman, and Iglesias gives his vague, really vapid speech. A very intelligent and energetic trade union leader from Nassau County, from Long Island, got up and asked him the main question. The leading demand of Syriza is a new London conference to cut at least 50%, 1/2 of the Greek debt has to disappear. You, Iglesias, will you support that? And what's the percentage that you would like to see haircutted on the Spanish debt? And at this point, Iglesias, effete, languid, practically expiring before your eyes, he says, you can hardly hear him. And then what you can make out there is he says, we do not support the Syriza demand for a 50% cut. And He says nothing about applying any of that to Spain. So I think it's clear this guy Iglesias is way closer to Soros than he is to Varoufakis and to Alexis Tsipras. Now, it's always bad to be the bringer of bad news, but it's better to get that bad news now when you can do something about it. What should they do? I call on Podemos. Fire this guy. He's a loser. He's a pathetic excuse for a hard-hitting working-class leader. You think the Spanish fascists, the phalangists, the Franquistas, you think the NATO command is going to be afraid of this quackademic Iglesias? He acted like a professor. He said, oh, this is the toughest quiz I've ever had, and I had to do it in English. And then he said, yeah, and I'll come back sometime and I'll give you a lecture about what our education policy is. I'm sorry, Iglesias, you're going to come back as Prime Minister of Spain is what you're supposed to think. And then you can show us in reality what it is you've got. So this is unfortunate, right? And we know the track record is he was built up by the Soros media, by the Berlusconi media, by other controlled media. They're the ones who made him important. So Podemos, you have been warned. Podemos could be viable. It could be a tremendously important turning point, right? That's all within your grasp. Where did you get this loser, Iglesias? Are you going to stick with him? Are you lashed to this guy? Because he's going nowhere. Let's get clear. So that is our finding. And again, Tax Wall Street Party smoked him out. Tax Wall Street Party was able to ask him specific, programmatic questions that made him reveal what he's made of. There's also the question, he refuses to repudiate ETA. Very, very dubious. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Now, as I mentioned before, we just saw the news flash across the international cable TVs that there's a 4-month bridge accord, I think a finesse, papered over, that has been agreed to by the Eurogroup of finance ministers and the Syriza finance minister for Greece, Yanis Varoufakis. But let's get it direct from the source. Let's go directly to Athens, Greece, and our very much admired political observer, Michael Chiotinis. Michael, bring us up to date now. You're right in the thick of things.
Hello, Webster. Hello to all your listeners. Europe, as it seems, has turned the page right now. I'm listening. We just watched the Eurogroup press conference, where it seems they have come to some sort of deal. I'm still processing this, but it seems that the Greek finance minister took the very least that he wanted. In effect, we're talking about a 4-month window in which we should find a way to completely reform the euro currency area, because let's be honest here, if the euro isn't reformed, it will eventually disintegrate, and every player knows this. As I have repeatedly argued, no one can afford the breakup of the euro. Okay, least of all Germany and the banking cartel running the German government and most of Europe. They cannot afford to lose the euro. Right now, the euro being the most effective tool and leverage for hegemony over Europe. On the other hand, this same oligarchy cannot allow any other policy than austerity, because, as we all know, the banking system is bankrupt. We live under bankruptocracy, as often said, and these are the two opposite forces. Something had to give in. Either they would give in to a policy other than austerity, or they would break up the euro. And as I have repeatedly argued, they wouldn't break up the euro. And we see exactly that right now. Varoufakis took a very small win, but a significant win in effect opening the door, the window through which real reform can be done. The main thing is that this blackmail, as he said, that was set up by the previous government has officially failed. They tried to squeeze the new government into coming to a deal, an austerity, continuation of the austerity under tight time limits. But this blackmail has officially failed, and that's what Varoufakis is saying right now. I'm watching him making his press announcements right now.
Yes, I that was what I thought too. That it's a kind of a finessing of the problem, right? It doesn't really decide anything permanently, but it is a concession extracted from Schäuble. And what you say, of course, about Merkel is the front one for a banking cartel, right? In previous years, the big thing on Merkel was that she's a creature of Josef Ackermann, who is the head of Deutsche Bank, this very large German institution, and they're the ones who are pushing this stuff and benefit from it. The only thing I might also say is that the euro, of course, also is beneficial for German companies that make things, right? Be it Siemens or Volkswagen or whatever it is. In other words, there's an element of industrial capitalism there too. But in terms of what comes onto Merkel's wheelhouse, it's the Deutsche Bank. Now I understand we already have ultra lefts who are complaining that Varoufakis is not militant enough, and I would simply say, the old saying is reculer pour mieux sauter. You take one step back and then you're ready to jump forward, and that's what I see with this. This is going to give us 4 months of organizing, and maybe the situation will change, and maybe something positive will emerge on the horizon.
And no more austerity. They have agreed to keep things under a balanced budget, but not the 4.5% surpluses that was promised by the previous government, but a balanced budget. For now, we'll keep it balanced, but the reforms that will be agreed upon will be announced on Monday. And the thing is, we have an agreement before the Greek government announces the reforms. So we're talking about the reforms that the Greek government wants, that the Greek electorate wants, not the reforms, not the neoliberal reforms we're used to. So they're going to make the case that the Troika is alive, and we're going to inspect policy implementation in Greece. But actually, these institutions, the IMF and the European Commission, will inspect if the Syriza program is going to be implemented correctly in Greece.
Let me just add, when reform, this is the big thing, right? Normally, when a banker says reform, he means stripping you of your rights and ripping you off. The Syriza idea of reform is something like a massive offensive against oligarchs for non-payment of taxes, right? Tax evasion, and that includes flight capital, because the way you do tax evasion is you send it to some offshore paradise for tax evaders, precisely.
Yes, and the most important, I think, is rolling back all the changes in labor law, labor legislation. In other words, workers' rights. We'll give all the old work, we will reinstitute all the old legal arrangements for workers. And that's real reform. It's not a counter-reform as we used to the last 4 years.
And as I understand it, that includes no hire and fire society, right? Not the American model where you have absolutely no rights and you can be fired for no reason from 1 minute to the next. Things like national contracts, legal status for the unions, and other benefits. And there was the whole array of anti-worker, anti-union measures that have been brought in, would seemingly be now off the table.
Yes, and rolled back. effectively.
All right. Well, you pointed us towards the question of a new president, a new head of state in this somewhat symbolic but nevertheless important position. Is there anything new on that front?
It is an important position. We have a new president. He has been voted. He's Prokopis Pavlopoulos. He was a minister of Interior Affairs for all of Karamanlis government. So the flirting with the Karamanlis
faction, sure.
Yes, is as I have talked before. As I have said before, we have this flirting between these two sides, and he's actually the most anti-IMF conservative politician that we have seen, and he has done certain very important things. I can't go into this right now, but he's a good choice because it brings stability. That's my view. And as I said, he's flirting with the Karamanlis clique to maybe break up the Conservative Party, which in polls is disintegrating anyway.
Right. The latest we have here is that 80% of the Greeks support the Syriza government, and you did indeed point us to this idea of Karamanlis. Anything else that we need to cover this week?
We'll know more next week.
Okay, we'll be back next week. Please mark your engagement calendar. Michael Chiotinis in Athens, who's got quite a following here in the U.S., we now find out. See you in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back. It's the second hour of World Crisis Radio, our edition for, recorded at least on Friday the 20th of February. Now, we want to devote ample time to the effort to free Reverend Edward Pinkney of Benton Harbor, Michigan. One news item now is the hearing that had previously been scheduled for next week has been postponed to the end of next week. February 27th will be the date. February 27th at 1 p.m. at the Berrien County Courthouse in St. Joseph, Michigan. Now, that was originally scheduled for this coming week on the 24th, but we're told the excuse was logistically impossible to get Reverend Pinkney there. We think it's that they're trying to disrupt the plans of people who were going to come and protest, but I can assure them that contingent and more will be coming. And one of the people who's been leading this effort is Larry Pinkney. He's a cousin of Reverend Edward Pinkney. Larry Pinkney is a veteran member of the Black Panther Party and served as the Minister of the Interior of the Republic of New Africa. He is someone, I believe, the first and possibly the only American who argued his own case at the United Nations under the framework of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Mr. Pinkney is someone who's written an autobiography, Saying No to Power, autobiography of a 20th century activist and thinker. I guess that's a biography by William Mandel. And he is a college instructor in political science. And right now he's leading the Central Committee, the Defense Committee, the Legal Defense Committee for Reverend Pinkney. So we wanted to have him on. He's also the chair of the media department of that. And in that capacity, he's been on Russia Today lately. He's been on Alex Jones and any number of other of these broadcasts. So, Larry, welcome.
Well, thank you very, very much. It's a special honor and pleasure, Webster, for you to have me on the program. I want to just clarify something very quickly. I'm very honored to actually be the family spokesperson on behalf of Reverend Edward Pinkney, though I'm not actually biologically related. We have a Reverend Pinkney and I have a joke about that. We say, well, we're related only in the struggle. And it might go deeper than that, but yes, I'm the family spokesperson and a coordinator, in the campaign to free Reverend Edward Pinkney. If I may just go right into this, and again,
Please
I want to thank you. Okay, I want to thank you, Webster. I also want to thank your listening audience, because without the audience, we would not be around. So I want to thank all of them. Let me say that right from the outset, I'm going to quote Reverend Edward Pinkney, because he encapsulates, quite frankly, what this struggle in Benton Harbor, Berrien County, Michigan is all about. Reverend Pinkney says that, quote, Berrien County is a criminal enterprise. And he's absolutely correct. Berrien County is a criminal enterprise. Those are the words of Reverend Edward Pinkney. Indeed, if I may expound upon that a little bit, the reason that on December 15, 2014, that Reverend Pinkney was whisked, and I do mean whisked, away to prison, is because he dared to stand up to the hidden hand on the plantation. What do I mean by that? I mean that the plantation in this case happens to be Benton Harbor, not only Benton Harbor, but in this case. And Reverend Pinkney was one of those, as Malcolm X would say, one of those malcontent slaves who would not stand idle, would not stand idly by and allow Whirlpool Corporation, and I want to repeat that, Whirlpool Corporation, who is really the monster behind all of this, to disenfranchise the people of Benton Harbor. When I say disenfranchise, I mean taking their land, I mean taking their money, I mean controlling the judicial system, the schooling system, the police department, the water system, you name it. Whirlpool Corporation is the monster behind all of this. So when we talk about a judiciary, i.e., the court system in Benton Harbor, Michigan, Berrien County, Michigan, or I call it really Benton Harbor, Mississippi, because in those terms it's really nothing more than a company town, and Mississippi company town, owned, run, controlled, operated, lock, stock, and barrel by what? Whirlpool Corporation. And to again repeat the words of Reverend Edward Pinkney himself, quote, Berrien County is a criminal enterprise. And that is precisely what it is, with Whirlpool and all of its corporate lieutenants, be they judges, be they police, the list is an endless list that won't be missed, as Gil Scott Heron would say. So, now, when Reverend Edward Pinkney had the unmitigated audacity to actually stand up to and organize in the community, to stand up to the shenanigans, to the blood-sucking, the avaricious blood-sucking, economic, social, and political blood-sucking of Whirlpool Corporation, he was targeted. He was targeted by Whirlpool Corporation via, that is to say, using its corporate tools, its lieutenants, the judiciary, the judicial system, the police, and any other component at the disposal of Whirlpool Corporation. So he was targeted. He attempted to make the municipality, that is to say the municipal government of Benton Harbor, accountable, I repeat, accountable to its citizens. Benton Harbor is a township that is well over 90% Black American or African American, take your pick. The point is that it is well over 90%. And of course, when it comes to jobs, when it comes to being able to have economic rights, those rights are totally negated. That's why I refer to it as Benton Harbor, Mississippi. Of course, as Brother Malcolm X used to say, there's always that, quote, Tom Negro, and in this case, one of the leading Tom Negroes in Benton Harbor is none other than James Hightower. That is to say, the corporate-owned mayor of Benton Harbor, who happens to be what I call a Negroidian. In other words, he's biologically black, but politically, socially, he is not. He is anti the people. And it doesn't matter about the color in terms of disenfranchisement. When a baby is hungry, the baby's hungry. It doesn't matter if it's black, white, brown, red, or yellow. Reverend Pinkney has been organizing for decades now the people in Benton Harbor, brothers and sisters of all colors, in Benton Harbor, to stand up to this austerity, this blood-sucking being carried out in the name of emergency managers, or in this case, an emergency manager, okay, which is really, what is an emergency manager? An emergency manager is a dictator who, in fact, takes all authority. In other words, you could vote someone in, but your representative, whether it's city council, assemblyman, U.S. Congress, whatever, whoever you voted for, no longer has the power to carry out your wishes as a citizen. Who has that power? Who controls that power? Why, the corporation. And in this case, we're talking about Whirlpool Corporation. So that's why on December 15th, he was with Tsipras.
Hang on, Larry. We've got a hard break here, but I'd like you to come back in the next segment and finish up this panorama because it's very valuable.
Thank you.
Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. We're waiting to see if Reverend Edward Pinkney can get through to us from that prison in Marquette, Michigan. This is one of the coldest places in North America right now, right? This is real Siberia. I heard 36 degrees below zero wind chill earlier this week, but we're very, very happy and honored to be talking to Larry Pinkney, who is a spokesman for the Pinkney family under this tremendous attack from the Whirlpool company town. Larry, we've been calling it Barbarian County. And the other little name that we coined here is the emergency manager. You might as well call those guys a little Hitler because that's what they do. They come in and rip off the place and leave it as a smoking ruin. But please continue. That's a wonderful analysis and summary you're giving. So please go on.
Thank you so much. And I do believe that both of those adjectives are completely accurate and correct. Indeed, it is barbaric. It is utterly barbaric. But we've got to understand that what is happening to Reverend Edward Pinkney is only happening because we, the people, everyday, ordinary, black, white, brown, red, and yellow people, we are allowing it. And let's also understand that it's not by coincidence that Reverend Pinkney, who was wrongfully, and I emphasize wrongfully, charged and convicted of election fraud, which is a non-violent offense, but nevertheless was an offense that he did not commit. All right? Why would they send him all the way to Marquette, Michigan? Siberia, you got that right. Of course, because the name of the game is to silence Reverend Edward Pinkney and others like him. That's what it's all about. And again, I go back to what Reverend Pinkney refers to Berrien County as being, and that is, as he says, a criminal enterprise. It would put the mafia to shame, quite frankly, in terms of the horrible things that they do. There is no justice. There is hypocrisy. There is no democracy. There is hypocrisy. So I'm urging everyone in the listening audience to please share this information. We need to understand that all of us, of all colors and both genders, need to come together because our very lives, livelihood, depend on us coming together around the struggle to not only free Reverend Pinkney, but to, in so doing, to fight the monstrous austerity that is being carried out. You know, it's really, they call it gentrification. I call it ethnic cleansing. It's nothing nothing more than a genteel version in Benton Harbor of ethnic cleansing being carried out by Whirlpool Corporation through lackeys such as James Hightower, the biologically black mayor, who is nothing more than a tool and a lackey, one of many in Benton Harbor. But then, of course, we see that all over the country. We see it all over the country. And I'm going to hearken back to the words of Brother Malcolm X. When Brother Malcolm said quite clearly, he said that he believed that there will ultimately be a clash between the oppressed and those who do the oppressing. But he also said that this clash between those, it's going to be a clash between those who want freedom, justice, and equality for everyone, and those who want to continue the system of exploitation. That's economic, political, social exploitation. And he also said, Malcolm finished this statement by saying, I believe that there will be that kind of a clash, but I don't think it will be based on the color of the skin. So you see, and that's unquote, end of that quote. The point is Reverend Pinkney is standing up today just as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King did. And, you know, as Dr. King pointed out, we cannot be silent. We must not be silent. And as Malcolm also said, you know, sad people don't make change. Mad people do. And it's time for us to get busy. It's time for us to get busy and come together, work out our differences, because we have to fight and struggle for the common interest. So we're not just talking about Reverend Edward Pinkney. We're talking about what Reverend Edward Pinkney stands for, whether it's in Benton Harbor, whether it's in Detroit, Michigan, whether it's New York, San Francisco, Chicago, Seattle, it doesn't matter, Oakland, California. The same kinds of battles are ensuing across the country, though Michigan right now is on the front line, as is specifically both Benton Harbor and Detroit. So I'm not going to try to take up all the time. I certainly appreciate, Webster, I appreciate the opportunity of your having me on the program. I send all of your listening audience my love and strength, and as you know, we say in the word Swahili, in Swahili we say lazima tushinde bila shaka, which only means we shall succeed without a doubt. And we will. But it's going to take hard work, it's going to take principles, and it's about not only Reverend Edward Pinkney, but as I said, what he stands for. We're going to win this struggle. Long and protracted, we're going to win it. Win it. So thank you, my brother. Thank you, Webster, very, very
Larry,
much.
just one thing, and I want to essentially give the outline of this, but the website to go to plug into this is the BH Banco, Benton Harbor Banco, and that's Black Autonomy Network of Community Organizations. So BHBANCO.org. There's a PayPal. You can and should make a contribution. There's also an address to send in a contribution, and this is obviously the most concrete thing that anybody could and should do is to make this legal defense possible. Larry, the one other thing that strikes me is that this is Fred Upton. This is a congressman. This is a whole political machine. Those who watched the State of the Union address saw Fred Upton, congressman. He's the head of the House Energy Committee, sitting next to the main austerity ghoul, and that is to say the guy from Wisconsin, Congressman Ryan. The way I look at Pinkney is I've been convinced that Edward Pinkney is an absolutely authentic leader of national and international importance, because we've just been talking about the struggle against austerity in Greece. Well, the struggle against austerity in the United States comes down to efforts in which Reverend Edward Pinkney is an absolutely key component. So we'll get in touch. Maybe we'll get you back on next week for a report on the eve of that hearing.
Love to do it, and thank you again, my brother. Thank you very much.
Okay. That's Larry Pinkney, the spokesman for the family of Reverend Edward Pinkney, and a great voice and a great cause. Back in a minute. Welcome back. Continuing now with our edition of World Crisis Radio for the 20th of February. We've been very fortunate, I think, to hear from Larry Pinkney with a rousing presentation of this situation around Reverend Edward Pinkney, the political prisoner held in the American Siberia, Marquette, Michigan. But now let's get that into context and an update on other important, vital activities of the Tax Wall Street Party. No better source for that than Daniela Walls, the chairwoman of the Tax Wall Street Party, who joins us now. So welcome, Daniela.
Afternoon, Webster. I can never hear, as you know, before what you've talked about with Larry, so I'm going to go through a couple points systematically in case they weren't covered. The hearing date has been changed from the 24th at 1 p.m. to Friday the 27th at 1 p.m. We were told the hearing was changed because the prison system could not logistically transport Pinkney from Marquette to Berrien County in time for the 24th hearing. It seems like a total throw-off of the organizing efforts that we were making to arrange for a crowded courthouse on the 24th. We had protests planned for that day, and we're working toward another packed courtroom like the one we had on December 15th. And now we have to press even harder to have the protest and pack the courtroom on the 27th now. So we're not shocked at this, and in fact, we have to come to expect this. We continue, however, with resolve. There is no evidence to be heard on the 27th on the juror issue. This is important. We thought that wasn't the case. The juror is Gail Freeling. This is what the Tax Wall Street Party legal team has been working on, that connection. They're not going to hear that on the 27th. However, the court apparently will still consider the other motions on legal sufficiency of the evidence, the misdemeanor versus felony issue, and the motion for bond. If those motions are denied, then the court is expected to set another hearing to hear the evidence on the remaining juror issue. So in a way, that's bad for Reverend Pinkney, because if he's not given bond on the 27th, or this isn't transitioned into being a misdemeanor on the 27th, then that gives us more time to do the investigation, but that means he has to stay in prison longer.
Right.
I've been putting the Tax Wall Street Party membership at the bottom of the list, and the party members keep telling me that I have to mention Tax Wall Street Party membership and party dues. First, I just want to say real quickly, we don't think that Pablo Iglesias of the Podemos party's trip to New York City was a success. I got to praise Gregory Edwards of our Valley Stream New York local, who intervened in the auditorium. We created an atmosphere of, who are you? Where's the beef? Rather than swooning with the Amy Goodmans, we created an undertone of skepticism and indeed hostility against the guy. Tax Wall Street Party in New York intervened with limited forces, but forced Webster a huge shift. We forced Iglesias to say, I don't support the European Debt Conference. Then what in the world is left? What is with Iglesias? Like, is he from Soros? If Iglesias is really Syriza, then why doesn't he support the main Syriza demand of the 50% debt haircut?
And let me just add to that. The debt conference is not just for Europe, right? That's not that limited. This is Spain, right? So Ibero-America, right? Spanish America, Latin America. There are places in Latin America that need debt relief, right? Venezuela needs it. Argentina would like to see half of their debt written off. So really what Iglesias is doing is that he's gotten money from people, say, in Venezuela, and he's stabbing them in the back again by saying, I won't promote this idea of the haircut for these creditors, and that's closing a door of possible debt relief in the face of people in Latin America who need it.
And I'm the head of the Tax Wall Street Party, and I'm calling on Podemos to get somebody more viable than Iglesias. He's not a leader like Tsipras. We're asking also for the reconstitution of the old American Committee on East-West Accord. And in fact, the Tax Wall Street Party has our own strong East-West Accord with our Russian local. The Tax Wall Street Party has a good neighbor policy with our diplomatic and cultural exchanges. We talk to our Russian local once a week. We know that Russia is a historical friend of the United States, but people don't realize that now because of propaganda. We're trying to get people of the caliber of Cohen, You did a piece on Stephen Cohen, Katrina Vanden Heuvel, Mearsheimer, and others, that they should come forward and create an anti-war, anti-neocon, anti-confrontation, anti-all-around hype group modeled on the old committee for the East-West Accord. The Tax Wall Street Party is taking the lead on pushing them towards this. And this is what I have to mention. The membership of the Tax Wall Street Party has snowballed. Ever since the beginning of the party, my preconscious, your word you taught me, was yelling at me that this is what had to be done, but I never expected the quality of people coming in and the numbers. The slow process, left process reform stuff and WIMP stuff, said it in the last few episodes, is passé. Sometimes reactionaries tell me, I have to pay for this, why should they get that? People need to start thinking systemically. What we are doing here at our party is about a radical systemic overhaul of the entire system. Let's find a way for everybody to afford heat in the winter, for example. There are people in the Northeast tonight that don't have heat. The idea here is for everybody to have a right to a standard of living. This isn't a punish the rich situation. It's a systemic change where we retilt the entire playing field away from speculation and back to production. Before we can tilt this whole playing field, we need immediately, however, obviously, to attend to basic humanitarian needs like no heat in winter, food, water. We need you to join the Tax Wall Street Party at taxwallstreetparty@gmail.com. You need to start working with us and doing stuff. There are immediate things you can do. For example, I got a letter today from Essex, England, and he said, I'm from Essex, what can I do? And I wrote back and said, funny you should say that. We have a branch in Essex run by our friend Stuart Hooper, and we need X, Y, Z to be done. And he wrote back, wow, I had no idea. I'm so happy. So I think each person would be surprised at what they can do and are capable of doing. And it's time for them to test themselves on the battlefield, because you are no longer allowed to be an idle spectator. The idle spectator days are over. The days of sitting and listening to YouTube to gather more and more superfluous information are passé. Greece has proved that this is no longer the time for that. We are in a new time, Webster. If you are on the computer 18 hours a day, then time is running out, and it's running out especially for you. So please write to the Tax Wall Street Party at Gmail and say, I want to join, in the subject line in all caps. Give me your email and your phone number. These are action days. A simple I want to join. Name, phone number, and email. I don't have time, I'm sorry, to read long philosophical discussions on theory and respond. We have a once-a-week conference call that might be a good time to discuss some of your ideas. But if no action is possible, then you can help us by funding, helping us fund what we are doing. We are asking for $20 monthly party dues to bring you projects like the Econothon we had a few weeks ago. There's no way that we can effectively take power without funding. This is the best money you could spend right now. The systemic changes you'll see begin to appear from our work as time moves forward. We'll pay you back and your kids back by helping remind people, of their economic rights and that they deserve a standard of living in this modern world. And you can do this by going to taxwallstreetparty.org. In the top right-hand corner, there's a PayPal button. You enter $20 and hit the button that says recurring monthly. Top right-hand corner, enter $20 and hit the button that says recurring monthly. I will put you down as a dues-paying member, and then we can talk about what further action you'd like to take. So that's where I'm at now, Webster. We can go into some general stuff that our party is doing and more stuff about Syriza if we have some time.
I'm afraid the music...
We don't have time. I suspected we didn't.
You ended exactly on schedule. Thank you so much, Daniela. And this is a going concern. This is growing. We're sweeping aside the cobwebs of decades in some cases. And Daniela Walls is a big part of it. So we'll be hearing from her again next week with another operations report from Daniela. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C., wrapping up our broadcast now, taped on Friday, the 20th of February. Concerning Syria and the Middle East, we've got this awful news. The U.S. and Turkey have agreed to train Syrian terrorists and give them weapons. We're told heavy machine guns on the back of Toyota pickup trucks those will be going directly into the hands of ISIS. Let's get clear. Whatever you give the Syrian terrorist rebels will go to ISIS, and you'll be held responsible, and you'll be impeached, or you'll be indicted as soon as some civilian airliner is shot down by these crazies. These barbarians, these savages, indeed the negation of civilization, that's their conduit, right, to get aid. And, of course, behind any deal between the United States and Turkey, we know who did this. This is the ISIS czar. This is the nefarious former General John Allen, the disgraced womanizer. He did it with emails, but his pal, Petraeus, did it, so to speak, in the flesh. This is an awful event. And the hypocrisy of the U.S., I was able to to go through these issues on the Russia Today Arabic service in an interview that was, I think, broadcast live yesterday, Thursday the 19th. And in any case, I'm hoping to get a link to this interview on the Russia Today Arabic service. Egypt, General Sisi, the new Nasser, and a viable and very important figure, has taken the lead in clobbering ISIS in the Derna area. Well, if you're listening to this program, go to Tarpley.net. Just look up Derna, D-E-R-N-A. Sometimes it's spelled Darna, D-A-R-N-A. It's Benghazi, Derna, Tobruk. And Derna happens to be the world capital of terrorists, of suicide bombers. Per capita, it beats out any other area. So this is a monstrosity. So some of those guys were hurled into eternity by the Egyptian Air Force. And then you look at the State Department, and you look at those long faces, and Madame Saki, and the rest of them, and that Admiral Kirby. Oh my God, this guy looks like an admiral from Vichy. So they say the U.S. does not approve of Egypt doing that, and we know what that is. We had some people on cable TV this week. There's a group in the National Security Council, it could be any number of people, and in the State Department, who actively support the Muslim Brotherhood, and therefore they support ISIS. And this group has to go. They've got to be cleaned out. They've got to be purged, fired, ousted. So that is what is crippling U.S. policy. So you're going to pick a fight with Egypt, the most important country, the most important military, and politically the most interesting. Notice we had, and we'll try to get more details, the summit between Russian President Putin and President Sisi of Egypt, the neo-Nasserist. And many good things came out of that. Above all, that Russia will build a modern nuclear reactor for Egypt. So Egypt gets to come into the modern age. And you can be sure that Netanyahu, right, with his obsession about the Iranian nuclear program, he's going to open up a new front. I can predict it in regard to Egypt, saying you must not be allowed to have a peaceful nuclear reactor. This is insanity. No country can be independent. No country can be taken seriously. As General de Gaulle said in 1958, unless you have a full nuclear cycle, and including all of the, in particular, the peaceful uses in this case, if you don't have that under control, you don't have a full set economy. So that crew, the ISIS czar and his gang, right, in favor of the Muslim Brotherhood, and this is what's working it out. Obama, wake up. We realize that Obama is not as bad as many of the people around him, but I think Obama has he's taken far too many rotten compromises now, and this is going to drag him down too, because once that war starts, it's all finished. Just a couple of things. We're told constantly Germany is the economic powerhouse of the European Union. My God, what a lot of nonsense. If you go back, take a look at Tarpley.net and put in Hartz, H-A-R-T-Z, and you will find an essay by yours truly about the Hartz program, which is how Germany is warehousing about 10 million unemployed and underemployed. They don't show up as unemployed because they're on the Hartz program, but anywhere else, they would be unemployed. Or take a look at Deutsche Welle, right? This is the German. It's along with France 24 and Russia Today and Press TV and others. It's one of your interesting sources at various times for material on international cable television. So Deutsche Welle story: poverty in Germany is at its highest level since German reunification. And this now means that 15% of the German population are in poverty. It means that you're below, you're at least 60% below the poverty line. Okay? That's pretty wretched. And at the same time, remember that the people that escape that do it by a very small margin because they're on Hartz. And Hartz is essentially you have to take whatever rotten, dead-end, low-wage job that you're offered. Okay, now let's think about the presidency here. Let's think about the U.S. Presidential season. We now have two candidates emerging, each of which is committed to being the biggest warmonger in their respective parties. We've got Hillary Clinton, and you know what's with her. We've said this a dozen times. Hillary Clinton is somebody who believes that unless she's the biggest warmonger in the room or in the scene, in the party, she's going to be considered a weak woman. She's going to be considered to be a softie. Now we have Jeb Bush, liberal Republican underneath it all, right? Wall Street Republican. Jeb Bush has now made a speech on foreign affairs where he essentially is trying to be the most extreme warmonger in the Republican Party. He's trying to get some right-wing reactionary warmonger cover because he knows that a lot of people don't like his policies on immigration. A lot of Republican racist reactionaries don't like any soft deviationism on xenophobia, right? Immigration and or Common Core and other things. Without going into the merits of any of that, you can see now that we're locked into a situation where the CIA Bush faction, having made a deal with CIA Mormon Mafia, Romney, he's now well launched, and Hillary. And we got new information this week about the Clinton Foundation. The Clinton Foundation has taken in $2 billion. Now, don't tell me that some of that $2 billion cannot be steered through various conduits to pay people off for the Hillary for President machine. Okay? $2 trillion. This is a form of graft. Where does that money come from? It comes from Wall Street. Wall Street is the by far and away biggest contributor to that. And then, so we've got the Republicans, warmonger junction, the Democrats, same story with this dictatorship of mediocrity by way of Hillary Clinton. She's now calling in experts to tell her what she thinks about other things, but I guarantee you she's going to pick the biggest warmongers. Then in the middle, we've got Little Rand. Little Rand Paul is going to try to do his act, but I think this is not going to get him too far. We've seen him flip-flopping, changing, turning his coat, and then he's got that embarrassing secessionist father going on there. So this is no good. And the other question is the West Coast dock situation. That is a lockout. Obama should do what Kennedy did to Roger Blau of U.S. Steel, to call him up and say, look, if you don't want your tax records to be re-examined, you better back down. Stop that lockout, you bosses there on the West Coast. See you next week on World Crisis Radio.